everyone. It's Sunday Nights with Faye Seidler. I'm Faye Seidler, your host. It's Sunday Nights. We're going to be giving you some news. The first story that we're going to talk about tonight is a complicated one put out by Indie Monitor, but effectively in our 2023 legislative session, we put out a study to look at the impacts of school vouchers on how that would impact North Dakota. This study was put into a committee that was then put into a subcommittee, and what we find is that the individuals that are really looking at this tend to be a couple folks that are meeting not in open hours. So they're not doing open meetings, and we don't have records of what they're really meeting or talking about. So it's a pretty sus situation. This would impact a advisement going into our 2025 session on the impacts of things like school vouchers or paying individuals to go to private schools. What we know historically is that efforts like this tend to defund our public schools and tend to be a detriment to everyone, as private schools are not held to the same standards as our public schools in terms of accessibility, opportunity, and inclusion for the individuals that can attend. So it's disheartening to see that there's not good open records on how those meetings are going or how that might impact the report that we end up getting to decide if it's something that would be worth pursuing in North Dakota. I recommend reading the story. It is still breaking, but it's something we should all be aware of and talk about and make sure that we have better open records on. In other news, we have a story on sex discrimination that will be allowed against trans students in about half the country. This is based on a Supreme Court ruling that is upholding state injunctions to not have to follow Title IX protections as set by our federal government right now. That's a lot of words. What it means is that a lot of states do not like the federal protections protecting trans youth as well as other things from our federal government. They sued, the Supreme Court allowed them to do so, but this isn't the end of the story. It's just saying that they don't currently have to protect trans kids. They can put that on hold until an actual formal lawsuit occurs. To my knowledge, I'm not a lawyer, but that's just my understanding of the story. Other news that came out is we have a audit that is diving into the filmmaking scandal of last year. What had happened was there was a state-sponsored filmmaking grant that was open for only 10 days, and the consensus was that everyone who was involved in the filmmaking process and granting only heard about it once it was closed. There's an audit to determine if that was something that was done above the board or if there was something shady going on with that, so just a lot of sus news right now. In other news, we have a review of the Legacy Fund and what we know about it, how it's been invested, and why some of it's been kept secret. The Legacy Fund is the billions of dollars that have been put aside due to taxation on oil in our state of North Dakota. I think that's correct. However, it became known about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago that we couldn't find out how that was being invested or where after doing an open records request into it. So it's a bigger look onto what we know, what we're finding, and our move to try to make it more transparent. So just a bunch of like shady stories, but a good story, a fun story. At the end of that is the history of the League of Women Voters. There is a comprehensive article that got released on that, and it looks at the history of that going back to 1915, I think 1912 in our area, about our formation of the League of Women Voters and how we responded to that in North Dakota. In moving to different news topics, there are some important trainings coming up that I want to highlight. First off, on August 19th, that'll be just tomorrow, there is a It's Real suicide prevention training for teens. So specifically for teens to have access to suicide prevention, mental health, first aid, stuff like that. It's coming up soon tomorrow, so probably maybe don't have time to kick your teenager into the meeting to watch all that stuff. However, this is stuff I keep on looking for, so I want you to know if it's something that's of interest to you or you think your teen would benefit from it. We can follow that organization, we can follow more opportunities, or even invite them to give trainings to local communities. So I want you to know about that for prosperity reasons. Another training that we have is what happens when you call 988. That is our suicide prevention hotline, replacing the suicide lifeline number that used to be a 7-digit number. That's happening August 20th. That'll be this Tuesday at 12 p.m. Another thing where it's a really great access training. If you don't know what it's like to call 988, if you're a professional who serves individuals who maybe would frequent that number and you haven't really called it yourself or don't know what it's like, it's a good training for you. If you want to find out more, you can again follow the organizations hosting it, and there will be future opportunities. In other training, we have the humility training for serving Indigenous patients. So this is for both Indigenous and non-Indigenous providers to get a better idea of serving Indigenous patients in the specific or unique circumstances they might find themselves in, which could be related to where they are within tribal health. It could be related to different kind of insurances or access to that, as well as the impacts of things like stigma or discrimination on a individual's ability to even trust providers can be competent. So that's happening this Tuesday, August 20th at 12 p.m. The final training I want to talk about is the CIS suicide prevention training, which will happen August 27th and 28th in Bismarck. This is an all-day training, and it's the most comprehensive suicide prevention training that can be taken by individuals or professionals, like first responder professionals. It tends to be more skewed to social work, healthcare, nursing, doctors, stuff like that. However, it is still accessible by people without a medical background or degree. It's actually being offered free right now, thanks to North Dakota Hopes, Indie Hopes. Normally it's something like $200, $100 to $200, so it's a pretty good deal to get that and to be able to take that training that's happening in Bismarck. But you could, if you wanted to, find out local training options because it's hosted by First Link that does training all across our state. Moving into important opportunities, Planned Parenthood is hiring a part-time campus organizer to organize information for individuals around reproductive justice. That is a part-time 10-hour a week job, if I'm not mistaken. It might be 10 hours a month. But if you feel like working for Planned Parenthood, or if that's exciting for you, you have an opportunity right now. It's really good for someone student-aged, so college age, to have fun, make money, and be part of a good cause. Other opportunities is you can enroll your LG Plus youth into group therapy at the Village Family Service Center in Moorhead. This is coming up in September, starting September 10th, so it's usually first come, first serve. I think they serve about 10 youth for each of these support groups, so if you have a youth who you think would benefit, get them in as soon as possible, talk to them, get on waiting lists. The Family Village Therapy Center does a lot of great work for our LG Plus youth in general. Another opportunity is our Racial Justice STEAM Collective. That is an open interest forum that's deadlined sometime before September, but this is an opportunity for BIPOC youth ages 15 to 18 or 19 to 23 to come together as part of programming to participate, learn, and invigorate ideas around combating racial injustice. So it's a racial justice program for BIPOC youth to collectively gather and be empowered to create change. If you want to get involved with that, sign up as soon as you can is kind of as far as I get it right now. Last thing I want to talk about is Parachico is offering volunteer training signups August 19th to August 20th. This allows you to basically sit down and figure out how you can be a volunteer for Parachico and all that they might need. They are a do-it-yourself punk alt art venue that hosts quite a lot of shows in our area. So if you want to help get involved in making sure those shows are successful, or to reduce some of the stress and burnout that happens from hosting all of those events all the time, you can get involved. I recommend volunteering in general because if you tend to be nervous around people, volunteering gives you an opportunity to just have a goal-oriented focus around why you're there, and then you can help you develop friends and make connections. Volunteering is amazing for that. So that's what I have for our opening news. There's so much more information on my weekly report that has all the news that I see. I try to just pick out like important stuff or trending news, but please check out our weekly report for even more than I have right here. I'll moving into our Pride recap, and then talking a little bit about our nonprofits. So that's going to be fun. Hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you.
Someday when I'm ready and my smile fills the mirror, when I'm motivated by more than spite and I can finally think clear, I'll have this place behind me, another set of wasted years. You will hardly recognize me, I will hardly sick of how square one feels. I'm sick of all these fresh starts. Someday when I'm settled down and where I am is home, when there's more than bill collectors hitting up my phone, someday I'll feel better, I'll feel so much less alone. Someday when I'm pretty, but till then just fuck it all.
If you love those beats, that was Straight Line Arrival with the song Someday When I'm Pretty. I asked for some music for this part of the show just because I wanted to bring a little more life to it than just me talking to you. But I really appreciate they were able to get me that and that you got to listen to some awesome tunes and look at some pictures of Pride. I don't have a lot I want to talk about myself in this because I wasn't there during the Pride events as I was ill. However, I asked for stories and pictures of people who were at the events because I wanted to show the life of Pride. I wanted to show the joy and celebration because I'm not the only one who can attend. There are a lot of kids across the state who aren't in a safe position to ever talk about themselves or go to things like this, and I want there to be a way for them to access it, for them to know that there is life and community for them, maybe not now, but when they grow up, when they get to be 18, when they get some choice, when it becomes safe enough for them to talk about who they are, there is a place they can go to. There is a home with lights on that is warm for them, and I want them to know that. That's why I do this stuff. That's why I keep the history of it. That's why I have a show like this and a lot of different reasons. But I was given two stories to share with you from the Pride about people's experience there. As I read them, I'm going to show you pictures that people have given me kind of going throughout. There's not a lot of like rhyme or reason to what I'm going to be showing you. It's just a story, two stories, and a lot of pictures people shared, so you can get a feel or a vibe for what the event was like. So I hope you enjoy this recap of it. I hope it's meaningful. Please share it with someone you think might be. Also, if you're watching this on Sunday nights, it's part of a bigger show. However, I always break up the stories and I put them onto my weekly report, so you can actually just watch this part of it or direct people to just this part of it if that's what they're looking for. Cool, intro over, let's get started. Story one. This was my fourth Pride ever, but my first experiencing Fargo Moorhead Pride. Growing up in small conservative towns my whole life, I was terrified to be openly queer and trans. At Pride, I got to walk around in public for the first time after top surgery and didn't have a single fear of being attacked or harassed. I was given nothing but compliments, both on my scars, transition journey, and my outfit. I've never been so confident and happy in public ever. Hearing the trans kids at Pride in the Park during the Pride Parade admiring my visible scars gave me hope. It gave me hope that they'd continue to survive like I did. They'd make it where I am and be free. Pride events bring a sense of belonging and community that you don't experience anywhere. It was warm, it was inviting, it was such a self-esteem boost. I grew up thinking I would never be accepted and that my state would never recognize me for who I am. But Fargo Moorhead over the weekend proved to me that there is acceptance for trans people in this state. There is hope for us. We deserve to be happy and confident in our bodies. I hope with every Pride there is a larger attendance. Even more kids can see we can be happy and we aren't monsters. This is our home too, and we belong. You just need to find the community and embrace it. Obviously, thousands of more stories happen than what I got, so I'm always taking them. If you want to include your story as part of this history, this is what this is. I want to capture it and record it because a year from now, we're probably not going to remember the fine details. And it's already been a week, so maybe a lot of people have forgot. But please get me your stories, get me your pictures, anything you're willing to share. I just want to have a history of this so we can look back and show that there was life and hope and safety and community in our communities, especially for queer folk. So thank you all for their participation within Pride. Thank you for the FM Pride group as well as the FM Pride Collective for all the work that goes into this. And a special thank you to the Fargo Moorhead Gay Men Choir who stepped up to volunteer to help make sure the parade was able to go on. They were going to march in it, but found out there wasn't enough volunteers to make sure the parade was going to be safe, to make sure all the roads were taken care of. So they volunteered themselves and made sure that the parade could go on for everyone else. So I want to give a big shout out to them. They are one of many groups that did a ton of work this weekend, but I do think it's important to raise up, lift up that story, because I think that's the history we want to keep. We want to remember that our groups stand up for each other, and that is how we get through this thing we call life. So I just wanted to do that the last shout out. Thanks for joining me tonight. I hope you have a good rest of your, well, this is actually my second story. Hope you enjoy my next story. In the second week of August, Churches United, one of the biggest shelters for individuals experiencing homelessness as well as families, had a social media post effectively saying, we might have to close this coming Wednesday permanently. And it was a shock to a lot of the community because this is a shelter that sees hundreds of people a month, thousands of people a year. It's the biggest shelter that we have. And because of a lot of different circumstances, they didn't have money to keep their doors open and were asking for help. Part of what happened afterwards was a lot of people showed up and helped them, and they set a goal of $200,000 to get through the end of August, with kind of explaining some of the situation as well as potential money that's supposed to be coming in but hadn't for a couple of months, and they didn't have the reserves to just continue to exist until they got it. But enough people in our community came together to make sure the doors to Churches United stayed open. This prompted a lot of conversation and discussion, and even last week I talked about the disservice that we have had in conversations about those experiencing homelessness, not from our shelters, but from our higher influential business, political people of Fargo Moorhead, let's say. But yeah, it was a lot of conversation, and I just want to highlight the work of Do Good Better as director. I don't know if it's director, president, owner, whatever you prefer. Wrote a really critical, important, reflective think piece about nonprofits. Do Good Better has been the name in raising money for nonprofits in this area, working with probably hundreds of nonprofit and being just the go-to. This person will connect your cause to the people who have the money to make sure you can keep doing that work. And they reflect on how difficult it is right now to be a nonprofit doing this work, and how so many are struggling because of inflation, and wealth inequity is causing everyone to have less money, which means our shelters get less and less donations. It's harder to keep afloat, which prompted him to talk about the need for more than just emergency aid for these shelters and much better infrastructural support for them. I think this story is an important sounding board to talk about the tax measure for property taxes coming up. It's on the ballot, but even if it doesn't get passed in November, it might become a bill that we see on the legislative floor in 2025, because a lot of people with money would like to not pay much more money for the properties that they have. When we take away funding, or when we take away more funding through property taxes, that hurts our essential services like shelters. And it's not just Churches United, it's all of our nonprofits are currently struggling and don't have enough support. And we have counted on generous benefactors to keep essential services floating. Services like Churches United have an immeasurable impact on communities like Fargo Moorhead in terms of wealth, like the ability to make sure folks can be protected if they've fallen to hardship, reduce the costs and burdens on our systems in the long run tremendously. These help our economy. These help our economy across the state and in our cities, so they should be something our government supports, but they don't. It's not just homeless shelters, it's also things like domestic violence. In this story, I want to talk about nonprofits broadly, and another thing that we've been seeing is that there has been a dramatic increase in domestic violence and a lack of resources to help folks experiencing it. Domestic violence and homelessness are pretty closely related, especially when victims or survivors of domestic violence don't have any place to go, or financially dependent upon partners who are abusive. There was a story that was really comprehensive, incredibly well done, talking about Jody's death. Jody was a lady in this area who was chronically stalked and eventually killed by an abuser, by a domestic abuse situation. And all the telltale signs were there that she was at risk, but the system was overburdened and underfunded and couldn't help her. I think if you live in Fargo Moorhead and you're a woman, you probably know of scary stories that you've experienced or you know someone who has. A lot of times, the often women that we see dead are women who talk about how afraid they are of abusive exes or partners, and how a lot of times they can get stalked and there's no real recourse. So right now we are seeing a reduction of federal funding for domestic violence shelters, and that's something that we have to look into funding ourselves in North Dakota coming 2025. But I want you to look at the story in the broad context of how essential these services are, how much we depend on them, and how we haven't built them into the infrastructure of our state. And they're even likely to get, what little we do help them with, it's likely to be even less if we do things like remove property taxes. I don't know if it's necessarily fair to combine all these into one conversation, but it is. Every part of this impacts another part of our system. So I want you to think about this story in the context of how much our nonprofits really are struggling, how much that we should look into supporting the infrastructure of our nonprofits directly, as opposed to depending on charitable individuals who have less and less every year. It's essential that we do this not just for the human rights aspect of it and for the ethical aspect of keeping people in our society safe, but that it's also directly beneficial for our economy. It's directly beneficial when people don't live in terror. It's directly beneficial when they have safety nets when things go wrong, to everyone. So this is what I want to say in this story, is that we have essential services that are struggling, and we could all do more to make sure that they're not. I'll report more about opportunities that we can take. I think some of the stuff's still on the table, like Churches United. But if you are interested in following this, I will talk about it more whenever I see it, and I will encourage action during our legislative session that we do more to make sure that we fund the fundamentals of a safe and healthy society. Well, thank you everyone for watching my show. That's all I have for today. I hope you have a good rest of your week. I hope we see you back here next week. Just want to give some thank yous to all the folks here who contributed to the show, who made it all a great time and informed us about the cool stuff they're doing. He will be my outro probably for a while until I choose to change it. You all have a good day. Bye.